Rob.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good, how you feeling?
Yeah, getting there.
Hey, forward progress, that's all we need.
That's it.
All we need. Oh, Ken, ready?
Hey, how are you guys? I'm in my mobile office, aka my truck, so I'll be taking you guys from the road from now on.
No worries. Jenny's there, Jimmy, Gwen.
Hey guys,
Hello.
Hello.
do you have cataract surgery, Elaine?
I had a stent placed for glaucoma.
Oh dear.
It was much more involved.
Yeah. I hope you're doing well.
I'm making some improvement, thank you, but it was a lot more than I bargained for. Yeah. I've had cataract surgery in the past. And that was a big nothing, but anyway, yeah.
Have you read any of this 25-1 stuff? I was
And
reading the statute.
yeah.
It's not fun.
I would say, is there anything left we can do or
Not much.
just
Any statute that has the first 100 lines about banking, you know you're in trouble.
banking? Banking.
Banking.
Hmm.
It's all related to money.
Well, that's the way of the world, huh? Well, I'm glad you read it. You can summarize it for me. Doesn't sound like fun, as you say.
Hello, everyone.
Hey,
Hi, Charlie.
Charlie.
I could hear you guys, but I couldn't see you guys.
And then you opened your eyes from your nap.
And then I think I'm gonna.
No, the nap was first. I don't think she accepted me. Maybe that was it. But I took it off, but I didn't read any of it.
Well, I sat and started to read the actual statute information.
Oh,
And
yeah. What they had, the initial one, right?
no, the actual statute. And it's a mess.
This one here.
Is that the whole? No, that's their summary.
That's her. Okay.
The statute's about 104 pages.
No, I didn't read that.
Yeah, I mean you got two zones and you got all this other hoo-ha going on.
Crazy, isn't it?
Live.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna get going. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Cristiano. I'm the chairman of the Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission. Today is Wednesday, August 5th, 2026. This afternoon's meeting is a special meeting of the commission. It is being held solely via remote via Zoom and a phone link. Members of the public who wish to view and listen to the meeting may do so through Zoom or through YouTube Live. Ms. Castro will be our Zoom meeting host. I'm calling the meeting to order at 4:05 p.m. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for
which
which
it
it stands,
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Castro, please conduct the roll call.
Commissioner Cristiano,
Present?
Commissioner Kelly,
Present,
Commissioner Motto,
Here.
Commissioner Harger,
Here.
Commissioner Tiki,
Present.
Commissioner Apple,
Here,
Commissioner McGee. Do not have signed in. Commissioner Bertola,
Here.
myself, Alexandria Castro, Attorney Jason McCoy. Attorney McCoy,
Attorney McCoy's logged in.
your volume's off. Okay, we'll come back. Dominic DeGangi. Your volume's off too. Ava Martino, Land Use Assistant, is present. Nicole Guzman, Administrative Assistant. You can wave your hand here.
Present.
Brianna Cole, Recording Secretary. Commissioner McGee joined, adding him in as a panelist. And just acknowledge Commissioner McGee joined in. Commissioner's volume sound works.
Commissioner McGee joined in at 4:07 PM.
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
No worries.
And then just ensure we can hear Attorney McCoy. No. We need to sign on so that can.
And while we're waiting for Attorney McCoy, I just want to go over some procedures for this afternoon's meeting. Just want to take a moment to go over a couple of things. Because this meeting is being held entirely online, we do not have the benefit of visual cues we would have if we were all together in the auditorium. It is much easier to speak over one another and much harder for the recording secretary to capture who is speaking. So I ask for everyone's patience and cooperation with following some procedures here. All comments and questions this afternoon are to be directed through the chair. Under Robert's Rule of Order, a member must first be acknowledged by the chair before speaking and addresses his or her remarks to the chair, not directly to the presenter and not to another commissioner. To seek recognition, please use Zoom's raise your hand feature. If you are participating by telephone or if the feature is not working for you, you may simply address the chair. I will call on commissioners in order in which hands are raised. Please wait until I have recognized you by name before you begin. And please state your name for the record so the recording secretary is clear as to who is speaking. Please keep your microphone muted unless you have been recognized. With respect to the presentation itself, I ask that we follow BFJ planning. We allow BFJ planning to complete each slide and to finish answering each question before any commissioner speaks. Please allow your questions and comments until you are prompted. I will pause the presentation at natural breaks and again at its conclusion to invite commission questions and discussions. There will be ample opportunity for everyone to be heard. The one exception is if you need something clarified or repeated in order to follow along. In that case, please raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged by the chair before speaking. Please do not simply speak into the discussion. If you would like to add to another commissioner's point, please raise your hand rather than speaking over the commissioner, and I will come back to you. Are there any questions regarding the procedures I just laid out for us this afternoon? Okay, hearing none.
But
The-
Attorney McCoy. I'm sure we can hear him.
Attorney McCoy, are you?
You able to hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm sorry
Okay,
about
so-
that.
No worries. So the first thing is under other business, on today's agenda item, commission discussion with BFJ Planning regarding amendments to the Shelton Planning and Zoning Regulations for compliance with Connecticut Public Act 25-1. This is the only item on today's agenda, and this special meeting was scheduled specifically so that the commission could give this work in time and the attention it deserves. The BFJ planning was introduced to the commission at our special meeting on July 22nd, where the scope of the project, the anticipated timeline, and the next steps were outlined. This afternoon, we will take up that work in more detail. I will now turn the floor over to the representative from BFJ Planning. Would you please identify yourselves for the record and proceed?
Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne Goldberg. I am a senior planner at BFJ Planning. We have a brief presentation for you today. We really want to discuss in more detail, like the Commissioner Chairman mentioned, the Public Act 25-1 and where this applies. Today, we won't be covering parking. We will do that at a later date. We intend to just focus on the housing element so that we can get in depth. And at a future meeting, we will delve into parking in greater detail. Just wanted to give that caveat. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So the first slide here is just an introduction. So Public Act 25-1, as many of you know, was previously called House Bill 8002. It was adopted last year, and it includes mandatory zoning changes that went into effect on July 1st. And those relate to residential developments and parking minimums, primarily in commercial areas. Like I mentioned before, we'll touch on parking minimums at a later date. Today, we're only going to focus on the residential developments component. So here, I just want to note that there's going to be a few terms. I'm going to try to explain them as simply as possible. I just want to note that we do have to use the state's definitions for these terms because that is how they're listed in the bill. So if anything is unclear, let me know. I can explain it in more detail, but we'll go through each of them individually. So the biggest change that's mandatory is that municipalities must allow for transit community middle housing, which I'll explain in a moment, or mixed use development on any lot that is currently zoned for commercial or mixed use development, subject only to summary review. I'm going to go through each of these terms individually now. So what is transit community middle housing? It basically means an all residential development, somewhere between 2 and 9 units. These can be things like duplexes, triplexes, cottage clusters. All of these are considered transit community middle housing, and the term is slightly misleading. It has nothing to do with transit or transit oriented. It's just any residential development that is between 2 and 9 units has to be allowed on any lot that is currently zoned for commercial or mixed use. So mixed use development also has to be allowed on any lot that's zoned for commercial or mixed use development. So what's mixed use development? Many of you are probably familiar with this already. It's a development containing both residential and non-residential uses in any single building. So that could be something like retail on the bottom, residential above. And so both of these have to be allowed by summary review. Summary review is the procedure for how these are approved. It's an administrative approval, which means that the Planning and Zoning Commission cannot have a public hearing. It cannot be a special permit. or a special exception, the only approval that can be provided is an administrative approval if the site plan complies with zoning regulations. So things like height, setback, density, and if public health and safety will not be substantially impacted. So like I mentioned before, transit community middle housing, 2 to 9 units, or mixed use development has to be allowed on any lot zoned for commercial or mixed use, subject only to summary review. And summary review is just an administrative approval process where there can't be any public hearing or discretionary action. You just have to essentially confirm that it applies with zoning regulations. So some towns or cities might say this is similar to a site plan review process, but it can be handled administratively. So what can the city control locally? That's probably what you're asking. It seems like there are certain things that only the state is able to enforce, but there are some things that the city can control locally, and that's the shape and form of what this housing looks like. So the city can set standards for setbacks, coverage, density, height. So with those 2 to 9 units, you can say we only want those 2 to 9 units to be X stories and feet high. They have to be set back X feet from the lot line. There you can set a density requirement. So that's really where the city has control. And that's what we want to discuss today is what you want the built form to look like for that 2 to 9 units that you now have to allow on commercial districts. So the next few slides, I want to just note that, oh, Chairman, do you have a question? Yeah.
Excuse me, Stover, one moment.
Yes.
Just want to ask any commissioner if they have any questions.
Sure. Yes.
So we can pace ourselves if we're not get too deep here. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Oh, wait,
Yes.
sorry, Rob, I was slow on putting my
No
audio back on. By density, do you mean number of people in the?
So that would be number of units per lot area. So you could say 1 unit per 8,000 square feet, or 5 units per acre. So it essentially determines how many dwelling units you can have on a lot.
And that could be anything that's not.
So that's a question that we actually asked to our legal counsel, Jason McCoy, who's on this call. We asked, what is the limit on what standards the commission can implement? And so there really is no limit. The law specifically says that you can regulate building height, number of stories, size, lot coverage, yard, open spaces, and density, as long as they're within the zoning regulations. The standards have to be objective. So like I mentioned before, there can't be any special exception or discretionary action. Jason, do you have anything else to add? I mean, from what I can tell, you can shape them however you want, but I don't know if there's a limit as to what's legally defensible in terms of the extent to which you can restrict or make these bulk standards difficult to achieve.
No, that's right. And I mean, they already have them set, so it shouldn't be a big deal at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're already set, really. I'm not sure if that's what the commissioner was exactly asking, if they could increase or decrease it, but you already have them set, so.
We have density set for commercial, for residential and commercial zone.
Yes, we will actually get to that. I have that's one of the main things that we wanted to talk about today is those specific area and bulk requirements, what you want those to be. And I have a table in here that lists what they currently are in the commercial district. So we can definitely have a larger discussion about that. But one of those is density currently, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Opel?
My question was just answered. We're going to talk about the setback and coverage and density regulations in a little bit. So we can talk about my questions then.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's the main focus of today. Because like I mentioned before, that is the main thing that the city can control. So we want to discuss that in detail.
Just one question before you continue.
Yep.
You highlighted the words transit community middle housing.
Mhm.
The statute also refers to priority housing development zone. Are those terms interchangeable, or is that zone a different animal?
It's a different animal. So right now we're just focusing on what is absolutely required under the Public Act. There's a number of things that a municipality can enact if they want to go above and beyond. And that's something we can talk about if that's something the city is interested in doing. But right now we're just focusing on the minimum that you have to do to be into compliance with what's mandatory and went into effect on July 1st. And transit community middle housing and mixed use developments are the things that are absolutely required. The other items are optional.
Okay, I read it a little different.
Jason, do you I mean that's my understanding. Um, I think you're muted. Sorry. Jason, you're muted.
I sent that opinion letter. Yes, I agree that I sent the opinion letter to you today. I think it was the answer to question. I listed it as number 3, but
Yeah, Commissioner Upple's question was whether or not priority um, priority the transportation zones, if those are required, and those are not
It's
part
called
of
a priority housing development zone.
priority housing development. Thank you. Those are not
they're
part
not
of what's
required.
mandatory. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not required, but if you do adopt them, it affects other things. And one of the questions I think people were going to ask about is uh, the way the city has opted out on ADU, so it could affect that. So depending on where you put it.
But for the record, you don't need to adopt that now.
That's right. You do
That's
not need to
optional.
adopt it. And if you do adopt it, it could affect something else. That's all.
So once we go through what is absolutely mandatory, we can at a later date go through the other menu of options that if you wanted to look further into, we could consider adopting. But right now we're really just looking at what is necessary for compliance.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we know for certain in terms of what zones this affects, and these slides have changed slightly since we got the formal legal opinion from Jason this afternoon. So we have actually some updates as on some of these open legal questions, which is very helpful. So what we know for certain is that these commercial zones will require transit community middle housing and mixed use developments to be essentially permitted by summary review, which means that you can't have any discretionary action or public hearing over it. So we know for certain that these commercial districts will have to allow that type of housing. What we think must be included, so these are other districts that include commercial uses, such as things like medical offices, other commercial uses. And one of the key things here that we got confirmation on from legal counsel today is that planned development districts are not excluded from this. So if there's a planned development district that allows commercial uses or mixed use housing, it has to permit these other types of housing, the transit community middle housing and mixed use developments, like I mentioned earlier, by summary review. So they're not exempt from this. With that being said, if there's a PDD that is residential only, it's not included in this. And the legal advice that we were given is that it will probably make the most sense to enact a single overarching regulation that ensures that any PDD that permits commercial or mixed use development must allow transit community middle housing and mixed use developments by summary review rather than going in and amending each individual PDD. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Yeah, so you're talking about, sorry, this is Elaine Matto. These are PDDs that already exist.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we don't change a zone to a PDD without a specific plan being presented. So this is not requiring that those plans all allow housing on them, or does it? If
It
it's
does.
a new application.
No. If it's a new application that is allowing commercial or mixed use, I believe you would have to allow transit community middle housing or mixed use development. If it's an existing one, you have to allow it only if it currently already allows commercial or mixed use development.
So any shopping plaza, any
Correct.
they could now include housing they could amend that PDD to include a housing component.
Correct. I think the zoning would automatically amend, the overarching would automatically amend all of the PDDs that currently allow commercial or mixed use development. So they would be able to come in for summary review approval, is my understanding. Jason, do you agree?
Yep. That's exactly it. It's because don't forget that PDD is its own zone. So if the zone permits those things, then this applies. If it doesn't, then it doesn't apply.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how you would talk about setbacks and so forth if we're in the middle of a shopping plaza.
Yes,
Already
we can.
established,
Oh, go
right?
ahead.
No, I mean, it's already established by the zone or whatever standards they adopted.
But the zone didn't include housing, let's say, an established PDD that's commercial. I don't know, am I getting too far into the weeds?
Well, you could, we are going to discuss the area and bulk regulations for commercial zones as a whole.
Mhm.
I think it would be ambitious to look at every single PDD and say, what should the built form of this be? If there's specific examples of PDDs that are, of significance, and you might want to look at the built form of those in relation to housing, we can do that. But I think the idea of having an overarching regulation for all PDDs would probably make more sense than going in individually. We'll definitely look at the area and bulk for transit, community, middle housing, and commercial zones. I guess the other way to do it is you could have a separate regulation, which is the area and bulk standards for all PDDs in relation to transit, community, middle housing. So, Jason, one idea is when we make that single overarching regulation that allows commercial or mixed use development and any PDD which will require it, there could also be supplemental transit, community, middle housing regulations that go along with it, correct?
Yeah, any way you want to do
Yeah.
it is fine. I just think that given the number of PDDs that Shelton
Yeah.
has, if you were in a community that had two, it would be different. But if you're in a community that has over 100, it would be a lot easier for you to adopt an overarching regulation. That's my recommendation.
It'll be interesting to see what comes forward.
Commissioner Opel?
So my question goes back to the determination that a PDD has to allow residential. The PDD is an overlying zone. You have an underlying zone, which may or may not be commercial. So I guess I don't understand how the determination was made to have an overlying zone become the regulatory zone.
I don't know if I understand. The PDD is its own zone.
But it's an overlying zone. It's not a base zone.
So
No,
nothing
it's
in the
its own
act
zone.
excludes overlay zones or floating zones
But
or
nothing
PDDs.
requires it either.
It's any zone that allows commercial or mixed use.
The
Which is the-
PDD itself. The PDD itself is its own zone that has the SDA as an overlay.
But there's an underlying zone that the city created.
That you changed.
The application of the PDD it's not as of right, but basically as of right based upon the structure, the way the regulation 36 is written, right? You fall under 34.1A or 34.1B. If you're 34.1A, that's the, what allows you to put a PDD at that location. Once the PDD is at that location, it's its own zone by itself.
Okay.
And it has its own regulations that governs it.
And now we're going to put new regulations. And in some cases, you've got PDDs that have now divided the parcels into 30 or 40 or 10 littler parcels.
Well,
So
you could
each
have.
one of those people are going to have the right to put 9 units of housing on top of their building. And can we put them in storefronts?
So it's subject to, like I mentioned before, those area and bulk requirements. So if you had, let's say, a lot size minimum, or that's not the best example. If you had a density requirement, that would preclude people from being able to put 9 units on a very small lot. They would have to follow that area and bulk requirement. So I think that's the idea of what we want to get to today, is what you all think are the appropriate regulations for what the built form of that housing can look like, so that when someone does come in with an application, the city has some control proactively over what they're allowed to do. Even though they are going to be allowed to do housing, you can control what that housing can look like. So how tall it can be, or how many units can be on a certain size lot.
I understand what you're saying, but my concern is you have PDDs who are single ownership. And then there are PDDs like Fountain Square, which we just dealt with, which has 7 or 8 ownerships, which means you can get 7 or 8 of these 9-unit lots on it. I don't think that's what the city had in mind when the PDDs granted commercial use in these spaces.
May not be what the city had in mind, but I think if they fail commercially, you're gonna look to put housing. And I go back to the question I had about how you would do a setback requirement for housing if it's in the middle of a shopping area.
Commissioner Kelly?
I think you're muted.
Commissioner Kelly, you're muted.
We can't hear you. There we
Okay.
go.
I was also thinking about also Fountain Square, where it's diced up into certain plots, and the plots are I guess they're sold. Now, how would you put in residential 2 to 9 units in there, or in a riverfront district where it's multiple, basically multiple apartments? I just don't get it. I just. Is everyone attuned to that, or what?
Hey, trying to picture it.
That's what I'm trying to do too.
Well, your house will be on top of Chick-fil-A, Charlie. That's how it is.
Okay, Commissioner Harger?
I was just going to suggest that the zoning map be somehow marked as to exactly what lots this would affect. To me, I'm just a visual person, and I also want to thank the consultants for providing what they have today. That was a lot easier for me to understand everything, but I think for my purposes, until I see exactly in what part of town what lots would be affected, I can't really make a kind of have an idea of exactly which way, how many feet of setback should be, or what the density should be.
Yeah, we can definitely do that for the next meeting. To
Thank you.
highlight on a lot on a map, and that might be easier because I know that not every commercial district is obviously the same. So there might be some commercial districts that should be treated differently. So we can definitely work on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Christina, wouldn't that, I'm not saying it would be impossible, but would it be realistic to identify every possible lot in the city that this would be affected.
Good idea.
It
They're
takes some time.
color coded now.
Yeah, we would just be essentially overlaying the existing zoning map, highlighting which zones would be subject to this. And then we can zoom in accordingly on the map.
Yeah, there are parts of town that would not. They're already R1, so those would drop off automatically. But I don't think that we can really understand the scope of this. And if we put in some kind of regulation or some kind of setback or density requirement or whatever, it may not occur to us just firsthand that, wow, we just allowed such and such to happen in another part of town, which would not be favorable. So that's why I was recommending that we get a little bit more detail. This is definitely not easy. This is a real pain in the you know what, but it's not something that's so really cut and dry. That with the amount of acreage that we have in our town, but we do have commercial districts in specific areas. So I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that, oh boy, we're just doing this off the top of our head.
Yes, yeah.
So for clarification, and we're on this, what areas or what types of housing are we going to be marking here? Are 2 to 9 units, under 16 units? I mean,
Well,
there's a
we
lot
couldn't.
of things covered in this bill here. So how are we going to mark the map up?
We wouldn't be able to go lot by lot and see what's existing. I think that would be too intensive to do for the entire city to look at every single lot, what's existing, and because every lot is able to be redeveloped into up to 9 units. That's every lot will have that is subject to that regardless of what's there right now.
Every commercial lot.
Yes, every lot that's in one of these districts. Yes. Yes, correct. So or a PDD that allows commercial or one of
Right.
these districts as well. So we can highlight on a map where we think this will apply and we can look at it visually. And so that might help people understand what parts of the city are going to be affected by it. Because I know it can be a little bit abstract to just talk about the districts. We wouldn't be able to do lot by lot, but you would be able to have a sense of where this is locationally.
Yes,
Just-
and I think that's the whole point. It's when you say abstract,
Yeah.
you've got to get away from that. Thank you.
Yeah.
To the point on a PDD, if we have older PDD, some of them have been around for more than 10 or 15 years. If the commercial structure that's in the PDD no longer is a commercial structure, can we tear it down and build 9 new apartments or 9 new condominiums?
If the zoning allows commercial, then yes. If the PDD allows a commercial use, then yes.
The question was, can they tear it down?
Yeah.
Well, the
So you
property
have a
owner can.
PDD that you allowed a commercial use on. The commercial use fails. Now you can tear down the commercial building and put up 9 units.
Let me think about it.
Sounds like.
It might be specific. Let me, I'll get your response.
Alexandria, here, I have the similar question. Is this a new build or is this existing structures that can be repurposed? I had originally understood it to be repurposed. I didn't understand it to be built from the ground, but that was talks from, almost a year ago.
It can be either. It can be any. It doesn't require it to be an existing building. It's just any residential development up to 9 units.
Literally, you could build it on top of Chick-fil-A.
Well, that's why we'll get into the area in bulk shortly, at least an intro to it, so you can understand what the city can control. So I'm going to keep moving, but we'll come back to this in a moment. So we were able to find some clarity on residential zones that allow commercial uses. So we received information from the legal counsel that even though there are some commercial uses that are allowed in these residential districts, they do not need to require this type of housing if they don't already allow mixed use developments. So these commercial uses that I listed here, although they're allowed, they do not constitute commercial zones. So residential zones that allow these uses are not commercial zones and would be protected from this. The same goes for industrial zones. It's our understanding from legal counsel that industrial districts are, the commercial here is accessory, that it doesn't reclassify the district as commercial or mixed use just because some of these uses are allowed. So this is a big difference from what we thought before. We received a lot of clarification from legal counsel. So these industrial zones would not be considered commercial or mixed use and would be exempt from this as well.
There was something that I submitted to them, and because this is a special meeting, I'll have it out for you guys next time. I suggest that you just adopt because this isn't really defined. I mean, that was kind of the debate, that you guys define it until you get something from the state OPM or something like that. And there's a resolution or basically a definition that I kind of wrote up, and I suggest you adopt, and that way you could control it that way on those, unless something comes out otherwise from office, the state on what they mean by what they're saying in this, because it's not entirely defined. So, right, Susan? I mean,
Yeah,
you
so
guys,
that's why we included here, this is an open legal question. We received guidance from Jason, but like he mentioned, there is a lot that is not clarified in the act and will require interpretation. But we're comfortable using this legal guidance that if a particular industrial district is not allowing commercial uses as a principal use. If it's an accessory use, it wouldn't reclassify the district as commercial or mixed use. So that answers our open legal question for now. We could get more information that could change, but it is our understanding that the districts, I'll go back, that would be affected by this for now are what we know for certain are the commercial districts, the special zones that allow mixed use or commercial uses as principal uses now, and PDDs where commercial and or mixed use is allowed. And that's the extent of our understanding of where, what zones must allow the transit community middle housing by summary review. So this gets into our discussion. So now that we know that 2 to 9 units will be allowed in areas of the city, we wanted to ask, what should this housing look like? How many stories? Should different commercial areas have different standards? Do we want to control the mix of bedrooms? There's a lot of questions here. I think the best way to do it is probably ask first if you have any questions, and then we can get into, we have here the commercial districts, the current area and bulk standards. We can talk about these. We can also, answer any other questions. So I'll pause now for a second before we get into the area and bulk discussion. Does anyone have any questions on what we just discussed?
If we have these standards, we also have a separate set of standards for 100 plus PDDs. So I don't know how you're going to get a single approval. I'm struggling with that. I mean, this is easy. Commercial district, you got setbacks, you got acreage, that's good. But we take little tiny PDDs that are 1/8 of an acre and PDDs that are 20 acres. I don't know how you think we can have an overlay that says this is the standard we're going to use. And you have PDDs and you have commercial zones that are next to big buildings, and you got them sitting in Huntington Center next to a green that's 400 years old.
Commissioner Harger?
I was wondering, Suzanne, can you go back to slide 10, please?
Yes. Sorry, I can't see the numbers.
That's
Okay.
13.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
so the
Oops,
last,
sorry.
the last bullet point on the right refers to professional offices on Corm Avenue between Hillside Avenue and Shelton Avenue. Yeah, Shelton Avenue is down by the Plum Library. You follow that, you go through, cross the Center Street intersection, you go up the hill, you go past City Hall, go past the some professional offices on the left, the nursing home. You get to the traffic light. There's a church on the right. Then you go up the hill. So if you cross an intersection, that is where there is a professional office. There's an attorney there. As you go up to the next block, the cross street is Myrtle. Hillside is further up. I'm personally not familiar with any professional offices after that attorney, which is office, which is on the corner of Myrtle and Corn, not Myrtle, Neen and Corn. So I was just questioning as to how we got up to Hillside. So if you could just check that out, and it's also referred, that same reference is on slide 11 as well. There is on the corner of Corm and Myrtle on the left is a small light industrial building, and that's probably non-conforming use. So, but I lived in that neighborhood when we were first married, and I just can't picture going up Corm Avenue and where Hillside hits Corm. It's a one-way facing Corm. I don't remember anything being a professional office.
One more point
Yes,
of
they're
reference.
sorry, can I just answer that
Sure.
briefly? They are not currently built. It's just where they're permitted. So within the residential zones, you're allowed to have professional offices within that district. With that being said, it's our interpretation from the guidance we got from legal counsel that these are not principal uses. So these will not be these would not be eligible necessarily for transit community middle housing. This is just a slide showing where it's allowed right now, but we can come back to this at a later date, but I don't think we're considering residential districts as part of this regulation as of now.
Yeah, I was just curious
Yeah.
as to how Hillside was the street that was identified as to.
Yeah, that's in the zoning regs right now. Yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
think it's about a
All right,
0.7 mile
that's
stretch.
the
Yeah.
case. That's fine.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Mr. DeGangi, go ahead.
I have a question for Attorney McCoy. If we're into an existing PDD, and the whole point of the PDD is that it creates its own standards and all of that, do we need to change it, or do they have to just live with it? Or do we have to just live with it?
Well, it's its own zone, so that's what defines it. I was trying to figure out the previous, does this go to what Commissioner Apple was talking about? Do they have to comply with it if they demolish it? And is that where you're going with that question?
No, I mean,
Yes, they have to comply with, it's its own zone, so they have to comply with the zone requirements, except now they can build they can put residential in it.
and just need to comply with the rules that were created for the PDD. Was otherwise we're
Yes. Yes.
You could create, and I don't want to overcomplicate it, but you could create a separate set of area and bulk regulations for transit community middle housing that could apply to all PDDs. So you could say, I mean, that is one way to have control over it. So you could require on, different setbacks, for instance, on lots of different sizes. That way, if a lot is 10,000 square feet, it's treated differently than a lot that's an acre. So you can create a separate set of standards, but that is the only way that you can really control it, given how many PDDs there are. It would be very difficult to actually look at the area and bulk regulations for each one.
Commissioner Apple?
I just want to make a reference. I believe that Corm Avenue ends at Myrtle at Neen Street and Quorum Avenue, and Quorum Road continues south. I think you need to check that. We've had some issues with where roads begin and end on other matters. So-
Yes, this is copy and pasted from the zoning regs, but we can take a look at this if you want to change that more generally. It might be an error in the regs.
I absolutely agree with Commissioner Apple.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Goldberg.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna scroll back here to the commercial districts. So, do any of the commissioners have thoughts? I don't want to, put people on the spot, but these are um, the current regulations for all, um, all lots within the commercial districts. Is there anything that jumps out at you as needing to be different specifically for transit community middle housing? Do you think, for instance, that the density should stay the same? 1 unit per 80,000 square feet is pretty large. That's basically a 2-acre zone. Would you want to consider decreasing that? That's one question. Would you want to keep the maximum number of stories for transit community middle housing at 3 stories? Would you want to implement a story limit in the CA3 zone? So just wanted to give a moment to talk about the area and bulk regs. Is there anything that jumps out to you as definitely needing to change when it comes to the built form of transit community middle housing?
I could not address a question like that without having some idea of exactly what is already situated on a particular lot in a particular zone. It's just I would just be guessing at
I
this
don't know if
point.
we have any CA1 lots left.
And that may be the case. So that's the whole thing. The whole darn map's got to be scrutinized.
We could come back with maybe example lots from each of these districts and to show you if we could find perhaps like a representative lot that shows what a current development looks like. Or if we had, um, for instance, an average lot in the CB1 district, what it would look like if it was built out to the current standards, and if then you could maybe see if you wanted to change them. Would that be useful to have some example lots for each district?
I
So
would be
you,
concerned as to what's already existing and if something in the middle of between two lots got changed or whatever, what does that do to the existing area? As to
yeah,
appearance.
unfortunately, it won't be something that you're able to look at on a lot by lot basis. I think it's important to realize that this is what's already allowed. So this is what's currently dictating the form of what can be built. The only thing that will really be changing is the use. So instead of what was previously allowed, a residential development will be able to be built to these standards. So I think that's the main thing that we wanted to get at, is that it's not, you can change the form of what it is, and we can provide some examples of that, but this is what's currently allowed. And it would just be changing the use of what's currently allowed, but you can currently build to these maximums. So it might be helpful for us to provide some examples for the next meeting. That way we have a better sense of what this would actually look like on a lot. That's the sense that I'm getting, is that for the next meeting, perhaps we should have more of a visual exercise that shows where these areas are, what some typical lots are, and what they would look like if they were built out to these standards.
I think
Yeah.
the CA3 with the number of stories would definitely have to be addressed.
Yeah, that was one thing that came to me too. There's a maximum height of 40 feet, but I think there's no reason why you shouldn't also regulate the stories if they're regulated in all the other districts.
Yeah, that looks like a oversight somewhere back in time. You obviously can't put 20 stories in 40 feet high,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So if anyone wants to chime in about specific area and bulk regs, we can leave time for that. But I just want to get a consensus, a read of how you all feel about the next meeting being a little bit more visual, so that we can get a little bit more clarity on what these lots look like and what areas would be affected by this on an actual map.
I was
So,
find
Chairman
it.
Cristiano, so I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
I think, taking things into account like building height or stories is a big difference. 40 feet is not high in a 80,000 square foot
Mm-hmm.
lot compared to 40 feet in a 6,000 square foot lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to look at, comparisons like that.
And
And
I
where
think,
they are, obviously,
yeah,
right? But that's going, what we're gonna need to talk about.
yeah, I think that will be helpful to look at some representative lots to see how that height looks different, like you said, on 6,000 versus 80,000 square feet.
Commissioner Kelly?
I was just going to say, I, for one, would appreciate the visual. I think that would answer a lot of questions that we have.
I'm
Thank
going
you.
to say,
Commissioner Opple?
And look at a map of the whole city. We do know that there are ways to carve exceptional areas. I believe we could carve two exceptional areas that are going to be roughly a total of 1.5 square miles in size. So that I think it would be important to have maybe that discussion before we got to the map discussion as to what areas do we want to exempt from these regulations. And that'll give us an idea of what's left and how we can deal with it there.
I think for clarification, so there's no areas that will be exempt from these regulations. The only areas that will be exempt are relation to parking. So all these housing regulations apply to the entire city, regardless of whether or not it's in what you're referring to as a conservation and traffic mitigation district. That's solely refers to parking, and we can touch upon that later, but that does not affect the requirement of middle housing.
But I thought you had said earlier in a discussion that we could exempt certain areas of the city that were currently commercial from these regulations. Is that not true?
Sorry, those are the only the areas like the residential and industrial where commercial is an accessory use. So those areas would not be included.
So in Huntington Center, where we have a small commercial district, you can drop 9 units on those buildings.
Subject to whatever area and bulk regulations you enact.
Yeah, we got a problem.
Yes, that's the consensus.
Commissioner Harger?
I was just going to agree that having something more visual next week would be fine, or next meeting rather. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any questions?
no, I'll say I find this easier to understand in these established commercial districts than how it would apply to a shopping plaza that's a PDD. That's what I'm still having some trouble picturing that. As far as these, like what's on the screen, these commercial districts, it's just a change of use of the buildings that could be there. They would look the same as
Mhm.
far as size, setbacks and so forth. Just that they would be housing instead of commercial.
Correct, yeah. And unfortunately, since it is such a new law, we don't necessarily have examples of other places that have had PDDs where they've dealt with this. So this is it's all very new.
Yeah. Are people putting housing in commercial districts? Do you see much happening in terms of taking advantage of this?
I think it depends on the location. I think there's some areas that or some towns where the regulations were particularly restrictive before. And I think those are ones that are maybe seeing a more turnover, but there are areas of Shelton that already do allow multifamily. So I'm not sure. I guess that would be more of a question for Alexandria if she has a sense of what the demand will be like for conversions.
Mm.
Commissioner Harder?
Just piggybacking onto what Commissioner Amato just asked, when you picture downtown and you're standing in front of Shelton Pizza and you look at that building and the brick building that's to the left, a lot of the upstairs, I believe, not maybe Shelton Pizza, but the one to the left, those were some offices. There was a music studio up there from what I remember, whatever. First floor is definitely commercial. The photo studio is no longer there, I don't think, but the tattoo parlor is, and there had been a gun shop there. I don't know, something else down the way. There was a beauty salon or something. But those upstairs floors, that's the kind of thing where we're talking about, we have the mixed use in a commercial district. Maybe they're not their offices now, but if someone was to come in and propose that those all be changed to residential housing, then that's the kind of application that we'd be permitted with just the summary review. Is that the right example of that?
Didn't they just do that now? I don't know that, I mean, formally?
Depends if residential is already allowed as a permitted use. And if it's also what the I don't know in that specific example, but also what the approvals process is. So if it's a special exception, that would require a public hearing and would be more difficult, let's say, or take more time to get the residential approved for that conversion. Whereas under this regulation, if it met the area and bulk requirements, it would be approved administratively.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm just
Yeah.
trying to.
Yes, correct. That's my, yep. Yeah. I
example.
think you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because all of downtown pretty much is retail on the first floor, and second floor has apartments, and that's a given. That there's no secret there. Above Relish Market, there's 2 stories of residential. Heading toward at the corner, we got the Amici's on the first floor of the Pierpont, and upstairs it's 3 floors of residential. Further up the street, we have the same thing. That's how downtown was developed. So it's just whether or not in other parts of town, that's the kind of look that we want to have for the rest of the city. There's we have Ted's Appliance upstairs down in Huntington Center, and on the right side is the music studio, and upstairs was an insurance company. Would that be an appropriate place for an addition to be put on and turned into residential? And to the left on the corner, we've got a real estate office and a mortgage company and the frames business, picture framing business. Upstairs was an attorney's office years ago. I don't know if it's still there, but again, that might be another location that we say, ooh, if we are doing this, are we going to back ourselves in a corner because we forgot that in this part of town, this is how it looks, and are we approaching it correctly? And are we going to have somebody all of a sudden be allowed to do something in a location we never would have wanted in the past? Maybe it is something we want in the future. It's just, that's why I'm so concerned about that we get a visual. What if Webster Bank down around the corner, the branch, all of a sudden that business said, yeah, let's put 2 floors on top, and we have an apartment building now. The bank is on the first floor. So it would seem that would meet the new requirements, but is that something? We have in the back there, we have where Vincent's restaurant is, a dentist's office, a liquor store, that whole little strip, shopping center. If somebody was to come in and want to put 2 or 3 floors above, would that be permitted? So,
Sounds like.
yeah.
Sounds like me.
Yes.
I don't think we have, it's not a question of what we envision or want. It's
Yeah.
Ms.
It's,
Goldberg,
Yes.
so I understand what the legislature wanted, right? The legislature, and maybe Attorney McCoy, you can correct me. The legislature intention was to prevent towns from essentially picking and choosing what to do with commercial property. If there's empty commercial property and someone wants to develop it, they're going to develop it, right? And, for example, we have empty commercial property right on Bridgeport Avenue, this old Viking tool company, right? It's been closed for many years now, right? And was it the intention of the legislature to say, we have these empty commercial properties that are being dilapidated around the state, and we want them to be developed, and we don't want local authorities to stop that development. Is that summarizing it to some degree?
I think,
also wanting more housing.
yeah, I think that's true. That's true to a certain degree, to allow flexibility in the market for things like alternative uses to commercial that may currently be vacant due to changing market. But I think one of the commissioners just mentioned too that it really is a bill aimed at housing growth. And I think most people have a consensus that the place that makes the most sense for housing growth is in the places that are already dense because they have the infrastructure to handle it. So in places like the 1 acre, 2 acre zones that are on septic or don't have necessarily the infrastructure to handle densification, that's why they want to concentrate housing in the downtown in commercial areas where there's already the infrastructure to handle it.
But the point is, we can't decide,
No,
hey, we never intended
it's out of,
apartments
yeah,
to go on this, like the example, this Viking tool. I'm just using this as an example because I drive by it all the time.
yeah.
This Viking tool property, we never intended apartments to be there or whatever because we never wanted it there. That's not our choice anymore. The
No, it's
legislature took that away from us.
correct. Yes,
You know,
it's
we
not
may
your
want
choice.
to, we may want a business there, but if someone's coming around and saying they want to put apartments there, we can't stop it anymore.
Well, that's why I think that the area and bulk requirements are so important. For instance, you could allow someone to have more or less restrictive zoning regulations if they do a commercial use as opposed to transit community middle housing as a way to incentivize commercial or mixed use. You could, have smaller setbacks, for instance, if it's a commercial use as opposed to a transit community middle housing. So that's why we're going to talk about the area and bulk regulations because that's the one thing you can control. And there's ways to direct the type of development that you want by using the area and bulk as a tool to incentivize certain types of development, but ultimately you have to allow them.
Thank you. Commissioner Apple?
If you could just address the parking component of these 2 to 9 units, as because I've read two different things. One says you can control it. One says there's no control. You can just let people build and have no parking at all.
Yes. Okay. So everyone bear with me for a moment because I'm going to use some terms, but we'll go over this in greater detail at another time. So I'm not going to go super in depth at this point. We can designate a whole hour or two just to talk about this one issue. So the state law allows for, so they have different parking. They treat parking differently for developments that are less than 16 units and developments that are more than 16 units. If you have a development that's less than 16 units, the law says you cannot require any parking minimum unless you're located within a conservation and traffic mitigation district. Each municipality is allowed to enact 2 conservation and traffic mitigation districts, which are essentially overlay zones In those zones, you can require parking minimums for developments that are less than 16 units. If you're outside of one of those zones, you cannot require parking minimums for less than 16 units. So one of the exercises that we'll be doing, and we've already talked to your GIS consultant, Ty and Bond, about this, is we'll be seeing how much of the land area is taken up by each of those districts. Each one can be 4% of the city's land area, totaling 8%. So we'll have to take a close look at what districts you want to prioritize as being able to require parking for those smaller developments. And that's something we'll have to discuss later, but that's another thing that is, slightly is out of your control. If it's more than 16 units, you're allowed to require parking up to a certain amount. But if it's less than 16 units, you can only require parking if it's one of these special districts, and you're allowed these special districts to take up 8% of the total land area of the city.
So, but the 2 to 9 districts that we're talking about, the of right units in a commercial area, the developer would not have to account for any parking at all unless it was in one of those conservation districts. And
Yes.
the conservation district can be 4%. Do they address, because I couldn't find it, can we do a really gerrymandered looking district that
I
might go
haven't
from
seen
Huntington
anything.
Center to Bridgeport Avenue?
I haven't seen anything that says that you can't have a unique shape, I guess is the one way to say it. I think as long as you're allowed 2 districts, each one 4%, as long as it's contiguous, I don't see a reason why you can't have it protect certain areas that have special considerations. Yeah. And that we'll designate a whole meeting to that, and we'll work with your mapping sub-consultants or consultants to identify what the best use of land area is for that.
That sounds awful.
Luckily, it's not the first time we've done this. We just enacted these laws for the town of New Canaan. We're also doing them for the town of Reading, so we have some experience we can bring from other towns.
But how many PDDs did those towns have?
Not as many as Shelton, but that's that's part of this, is that it's a new law, and that not all of these items have been fleshed out, and there's a lot that's up to interpretation. So that is just sort of the confines of the reality we're working in right now.
Commissioner Harder?
I just looked online, Googled what's the land area of Shelton. One reference says, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, we have 30.63 square miles. Another, and it references, yeah, that's the land area. And then there's under geographic breakdown, it's 31.9 square miles. So when you multiply the lesser amount, 30.63 by 4%, that's 1.2252 square miles. Am I computing that right? Does that sound right?
Yeah, for each of the exemption districts. And
Right.
it's the parking exemption districts. That's why we're going to have to get really creative with what that map looks like.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we will have a whole meeting on where those locations should be. But first, we wanted to just talk about one topic at a time, because there are so many intricacies to these laws, and so we wanted to focus on middle housing this week. At the next meeting, we can talk a little bit more about the area and bulk, and what specific geographic areas this will affect. And then I think it would make sense to move into parking after that.
Okay. Does any commissioner have any other questions before we wrap up for today?
This is a mess.
We're here to work with you. No, this isn't the first time we're doing it. So any questions that you have, you can direct them through the chairman or through the city, and we can make sure to address them at the beginning of each meeting, or send out materials ahead of time as well.
Organized redevelopment is what we have going on here.
Disorganized redevelopment.
Yeah.
We are working to accomplish what the legislation wanted us to do here. Well, Ms. Goldberg, I thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you
Uh,
all.
To the commission,
Commissioner Cristiano, do you have any idea when the next meeting would be?
just starting that sentence.
Okay,
My intention is to, speak with, I don't know if it'll be Ms. Goldberg, or BFJ, staff here and Attorney McCoy. I'm hoping to get a meeting at the end of August, maybe the last week of August. It may or may not be on a Wednesday, but somewhere around this time, like a 4 o'clock, another special meeting. See where we can go. We are trying to get this done for September if it's going to be possible, but I think we're going to need at least another meeting or two to talk these things through.
so that sounds like it might be the week of the 24th.
That's, yeah, or the later end of that week, or
Yeah,
'cause we
Monday
have
the
the holiday
20th.
there. We have the
Yeah.
holiday there we got to deal with too. So
Right.
yeah, we got to figure out the schedule and when BFJ is available or someone from there is available and figure it out.
Okay, because as it is right now, the only other meeting that we have scheduled for planning and zoning is Wednesday, the 19th.
Yes, the 19th, there was an initial conversation about having some of this done on the 19th. The 19th agenda is quite hefty at this point, so
Right.
not be doing this on the 19th.
Right. Okay, thank you.
No problem. I appreciate everyone's time today. I think it's time well spent. I think it's good to have this on a focused meeting, because as you know, our meetings tend to get occupied by many other things, and it's hard to then shift gears to concentrate on this. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting at
So moved, Mr.
5:17
Chairman.
p.m. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion, meeting is adjourned at 5:17 p.m. Have a good night, everyone.